And hello, friends. We welcome you to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Elliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. Joining us on the program today is writer Sarah Burroway. She's also a contributing artist to the Women of Appalachia project, and we're going to talk to her today about her career as a writer and also the Women in Appalachia project. And Sarah is a writer and a theater artist from Flatwoods, Kentucky. Her work has been included in the Women of Appalachia's project Women Speak in both 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017, which includes 2 anthologies of curated work. She was a 2017 summer resident with the Kentucky Foundation for Women Our Voices project and studied under former poet laureate Georgia Ella Lyon. Her essays and poetry have been published in Still, the Journal, the Bitter Southerners Folklore Project, and the Worcester Journal. Her plays and monologues have been produced in California, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, and New York, where her work was performed on stage on the same program as the play Eve Ensler, who is the writer of the Vagina Monologues. She spent nearly half of her career as a journalist, writing and announcing broadcast news and hosting radio call-in talk shows. 20 years ago, she left the radio business and began writing grants and technical reports for the education and human services sectors, and she currently serves as the Director of External Relations for Ohio University Southern, which is a regional campus of Ohio University. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the program today Sarah Burroway. Sarah, good to see you. Thanks for coming on Chapters.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start first, before we get into some of your work as a writer, the Women in Appalachia project, or Women of Appalachia project. Tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of how you got involved with that project.
Sure. The Women of Appalachia project is 9 years old. It was founded by Carrie Gunter Seymour, and it was based on the premise that often women from Appalachia are stereotyped in a negative way. And the concept behind Women of Appalachia was to bring together fine artists across all different types of art: fiber art, painting, sculpture, what have you, and writing, to allow women from Appalachia to use their art to help dispel those negative stereotypes, to show that women are strong, women are intelligent, women are capable of so many things from the various walks of life that we embody across the Appalachian region of our country.
So when we think about sort of that mission statement of the Women in Appalachia project, why is it important for us? We talk so much about Appalachian culture and folklore and storytelling traditions, and we talk about men and the work that they've done. Why is it important for us to remember the contributions that women have made to Appalachian culture?
Well, if it weren't for women, none of us would be here. That's one important thing to think about. But I think when you consider Appalachian artists who are women, their contributions to the craft are as significant as that of men. When you look at art as feminism, it's not that any one is better or more, it's that they should be considered equally.
So how did you get involved in this organization, and when did you first start contributing and really having a role to play in the organization?
Well, the part that I'm involved in, obviously, is the writing. That component is called Women Speak, and it involves a curated process by which women writers submit their work. There are typically 2 or 3 adjudicators that will review the writing samples that are received by Women of Appalachia project, and then those are selected for the Women Speak component of the project. Now that involves a series of spoken word events where the writers come together and will share their short stories, their poetry, essays. We've had a few storytellers along the way, but it's just a really good event for the writers to get together and share their work in front of a live audience.
So where are some of the places that the Women in Appalachia Project have conducted sort of these festivals or these opportunities to read and share work?
Sure. The founder and curator, Carrie, is from the Athens area. So that is kind of the nucleus of where Women of Appalachia Project was born. And so many of the venues are in Athens, are in Albany, Chillicothe, other cities such as that in southern Ohio. And more recently, with more writers from West Virginia joining into the submissions and writers from Kentucky, we're starting to see some of the venues now in those other states, not just in Ohio. There was an event for Women Speak, as well as the Fine Arts exhibit at West Virginia University in Morgantown this year. Here in the tri-state area, we've had Women Speak and the Women of Appalachia Art exhibit. The Women of Appalachia Art Exhibit at Ohio University Southern in Ironton for the past 2 cycles, and we hope to continue that in the fall of 2018.
One of the things that the organization sort of sponsors or organizes is an Appalachian Advocate Award. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how the determination is made for who gets that award?
Sure. I think this is the 3rd year for that, because as the Women of Appalachia Project has grown, it was just a handful of artists and writers in the beginning years, and now this will be, we're in our 9th year this year. Several years ago, 3 years ago, the Women of Appalachia started the Advocate Award, and that's for a woman from any of the Appalachian communities who has performed exemplary work to improve the quality of life in her community. That might be in education, it might be in healthcare, economic development. However, the woman has advanced quality of life in her Appalachian community. That's what this award is set aside for.
Very good. You know, what's interesting when I was doing some research about the project, and I'm always reminded of this anytime you dig into Appalachia, is this idea of just how widespread Appalachia is. I mean, there's 420 counties that comprise Appalachia, starting all the way from southern New York and going into Arkansas. And oftentimes we think about Appalachia as just being West Virginia or Ohio or eastern Kentucky, but when you really encompass the whole swath of what Appalachia is, it really stretches through a large part of the country. And you think about all the writers that inhabit those counties,
Yes.
and the rich talent and the amount of people who would be eligible, women especially, eligible to participate in this organization.
Mm-hmm. I think this, in the current cycle, we had artists and writers from 8 states of Appalachia, so that representation has grown from that initial nucleus of Ohio. I was the first Kentucky writer to be juried in, and now we've got very accomplished writers from West Virginia, from Tennessee, Virginia, from the other Appalachian states that are now joining the party. So it's good to grow and to see some new talent.
And having been in the organization for a while, when you get new writers involved or new artists involved, what is some of the feedback that you get from them, or what are some of the comments you've heard them say about the organization or about being juried in or curated in to participate? What's some of the feedback you all get?
Well, I'll back up to the first Women Speak event that I participated in, and keep in mind that I've been writing basically all my adult life, but I hadn't written for myself. I had always written as a news writer or as a grants person, proposal writer, technical report writer. So it's very different when you are for the first time sharing your work that was just dictated by what was in your heart, not responding to the headlines of the day or the questions on a news or on a grant application, so to speak. So that first time that I participated in a Women's Speak event, it was at Arts West in Athens, and Arts West is a very funky, cool kind of art space that's converted from a former church, and it's now operated as a theater and a gallery, and different arts activities occur there. And I didn't know a soul because the submissions were done online, all the correspondence back and forth, you'd been selected for this, you're now part of the Women of Appalachia Project, had all been done electronically. So to walk into this room of total strangers, and to drive almost 3 hours to get there from my home, I was, by myself, and I'm thinking, how is this going to play out? I was welcomed, like I say, instantly into this wonderful, welcoming environment of other writers, and it was as if I had known these women, all my life, and I had just met them moments before. But it's a very supportive, very encouraging environment. You'll see and hear all different styles of writing. We've got one particular writer who is a slam poet, and so when she is up on the podium sharing her work, it's very different from Another writer that I have in my mind that writes from a different perspective of creative nonfiction. So it's a very broad cross section, just like the women themselves, coming from all different walks of life.
Yeah, very good. So if someone is interested kind of in getting involved with the project, or maybe they've got something they would like to submit to be juried in, what is the timeline like? How does the schedule work? What kind of a calendar does the organization work under?
Right now we're planning the events for 2018-2019. So that call for submissions will come out later this year. Women of Appalachia Project.org is the website. And all the information is there on how the fine artists can submit their work, how writers can submit their work. And then it's a pretty quick turnaround. Once you do submit, you do find out pretty quickly. And then the next step in that process is to work with the curator to identify which events that will fit into your calendar. You're asked to participate in a minimum of 2 of the Women Speak events if you're a writer. And where they are kind of spread out through a wide region, you've got an opportunity to travel as much as you want or as little as you want to share your work at the podium.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity, and if there's anybody in our audience that is a woman from Appalachia and wants to contribute, I think it would be a great opportunity for them to get involved and have a chance to have their work juried in. But as you mentioned a moment ago, have a chance to meet some other writers and really feel welcomed into a different community.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is it's multi-generational. We have some very young women in their late teens, early 20s, all the way up through writers and artists who are into their 70s or 80s that are vibrant, very productive, and very accommodating as far as sharing their comments and being there to kind of foster you into the group.
Great. It sounds like a wonderful organization, and I'm so glad that you're involved and that it's continuing to thrive and continuing to do well. I want to ask you about your own work as a writer. I know that you kind of focus more on creative nonfiction. What is it about that genre that really appeals to you as a writer? Why do you like writing kind of in that genre?
Well, I think it comes from my news background, and most of my writing for almost 20 years was writing for broadcast news. So you're out being the eyes and the ears of your community. But the only limitations, especially in writing for radio, it's very short snippets, very tiny stories. Your whole newscast may only be 5 minutes back in the day. And I think my attraction to creative nonfiction is to look a little further or a little deeper into whatever those stories are. I'm really interested in people, in understanding the whys and the what makes them tick, what motivates them to make decisions that they do make, and how those decisions impact the consequences that they face in their lives.
Very good, very good. Now, I know that you and I also share a common experience. You're in the creative writing program at Eastern Kentucky University.
And I'm very proud to call you my mentor,
Oh,
Elliot,
I appreciate that. Very nice of you to say. And,
Thank you.
we both have that shared experience. We've had other authors kind of, in their bios over the years have talked about that. But you being in the program now, your thoughts on an MFA program and how it's helpful to you and why it is valuable. Maybe if someone in our audience has heard about it or is thinking about taking that step, but what do you find is the benefits of being in a program like that where you're focusing on your writing?
Sure. Actually, the MFA that I'm currently pursuing through Bluegrass Writer Studio will be my second master's degree. I'm as pedigreed as I really needed to be, but it was something I wanted to do for myself. And so when I was doing research on creative writing MFA programs, I needed something that was low residency, obviously. I'm a working professional. I have family commitments here in the tri-state community. I'm involved in my own nonprofit theater company. I have lots of things that I'm involved with, but I really wanted to satisfy this itch that I had to kind of take my writing to the next level. So what I found in my research of MFA programs, Bluegrass Writer Studio for me offered a schedule that was conducive to my needs. Two, I really liked the personal interaction that I observed when I went down and visited one day of the residency before I was even accepted into the program. And I got to see how the faculty interacted with the students. I got to see the students and the camaraderie of how they were working together and communicating about their work. And it was a very supportive but very honest environment. And I think for me that was really what sold me on that. Bob Johnson has been a wonderful teacher and advisor to me, as have all the faculty I've worked with so far. And I think that being part of Bluegrass Writer Studio has already helped me, and I'm halfway through the program. I only attend part-time due to work and family commitments, but I couldn't be more pleased with the program at this point.
Great, very good. I'm glad to hear you're having a good experience. I wanted to ask you about one of your stories that you've had published, and that's Touch.
Okay.
I really connected with that story because I love how you open that story, and you say, sort of right in the first line, sometimes in the mundane conversation about grocery shopping or last night's sitcom or laundry, an idea quietly rolls out in front of you, and like a penny on the floor, you mindlessly pick it up, hold it between your fingers, and for a split second, then tuck it into your pocket where it stays unnoticed. I love that image and that connection that you make with the reader. Tell us a little bit about that story and what happened to it when you were finished with it.
This story is based on a personal experience that I had with, she was my mother-in-law at the time, and she was an elderly woman and had several handicaps. So as her daughter-in-law at that time, I would help her with her housework and her laundry and things. And so we did spend a lot of time together. And she was 89 years old, and I was in my 30s, so there was quite an age span, and she was a very wise woman, and I was very endeared to her. And she would share these nuggets of wisdom with me, and at the time, you're just trying to, get the groceries put away or those mundane tasks. And so a lot of those lessons, not that you weren't listening, but you really didn't have time or interest at that point in your life to kind of focus on them. And so there's one particular lesson that is the basis of the story. And she had told me that in order to get past the loss of a loved one, that if you had the opportunity, you should try to touch that person after the life had left their body. And at the time I can remember thinking, what a gruesome thing. Who wants to touch a dead person, whether it's somebody you love or not? Why would you want to do that? And so, I just kind of filed that little tidbit away, and she had shared a story with me about finding a baby, and when she was a little girl in Ashland, and then the baby passed away, and that she had always needed to have some form of closure and didn't really have it. So fast forward to the end of the story, and she is in her dying days, and I'm taking care of her as she's passing, and she died. She'd had a lot of health issues and so forth. But it was at that moment that nugget, that lesson that she had told me so many years before kind of came full circle. And I wasn't grossed out touching her. It was as if that validated that she was no longer with us. She was no longer in the living, that her body was just a vessel for that wonderful, vibrant spirit that had, become so important to me in my life as a young adult woman. And so I really was appreciative that she had shared what she had learned in her life. And so that's the baseline of the story, Touch.
Yeah, and I love how you kind of closed it out as sort of like I don't want to say like a acknowledgement or a PS statement, but at the end you say, sometimes now I find myself missing her, not in a grieving sort of way, but rather thinking about her and her story she shared with me during the 9 years that I knew her. So yeah. even now that impression that she made on you still resonating. Yes. I wanted to ask you also about your submissions, and you've had a lot of stories published in some different literary journals, as we mentioned at the beginning of the interview today. And before I get to that, I wanted to ask you about Georgia Ella Lyon. Mm-hmm. Who was she? and what was it like getting to study and work under her?
George Ella is like one of my favorite people in the entire world. George Ella Lyon was the Poet Laureate of Kentucky, and this past summer I had the opportunity to spend a week with her and 6 other writers that were selected by the Kentucky Foundation for Women for their summer residency program. So we're sequestered in this beautiful farmhouse on Wolf Pen Woods near Louisville, and it's isolated. Like at night, there's not a street light, there's not a passing car, there's crickets and stars. And so for the 7 days and 6 nights that we were there for the residency, we had structured time during the day, and Georgella facilitated and led us in a series of exercises about finding our voice, whichever, whether if we were writing for social justice type purpose. One of the residents was writing some memoir, some personal narrative about some very difficult family situations. And so just trying to help understand our responsibility as writers to be authentic to ourselves, to be authentic for the audiences that we're writing for, or for the purposes or functions that we're writing for. She's still very vibrant and very active in the Central Kentucky writing scene. She's a wonderful Eastern Kentucky Appalachian writer. She's originally from Harlan, but now lives in Lexington. She's written numerous poems, children's books, plays, songs. She's a very prolific writer, so I would encourage your viewers to check out George Ella Lyon. She's a joy.
Yeah, she's really a wonderful writer, that's for sure. And you've had essays and poetry published in Still, the Bitter Southerners Folklore Project. You've had some featured in the Volume 3, the Women Speak, Women of Appalachia Project. How did you find those journals? And for someone who maybe got something and they're thinking, well, do I submit it? Should I submit it? How do I submit it? How does all that process work?
Well, for me, it was getting connected to Submittable. Submishmash, that's easy for me to say, is a great resource. So you can receive that information in your inbox. There's no charge for that. You can look at submission opportunities, and you can look at those that most closely align with your work and make the best judgments you can, because you don't want to waste your time, you don't want to waste a reviewer's time, and just go ahead and go for it. You've got to submit your work in order to get some feedback from time to time. You are afforded that. Not every opportunity is going to provide that critique or that written evaluation for you, but it's a good way to hold your work up to someone who doesn't know you personally, to someone who is going to be very objective in how they review your work. And then sometimes you'll get those rejection notices, and that's just how it works out. And then sometimes you get those acceptance notifications, and those are always good too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you would agree not to be afraid or too down on the dumps, I guess, on the rejection letters. That the rejection is a part of the process. That if you are going to send your work out, expect rejection, and not to be, too hard on yourself when those rejections start piling up.
Exactly. And I think it was last year, the year before, there was an article that was going around in writing circles about every writer should strive for 100 rejections a year. Well, I don't know if that should be the goal, but I think your goal should be to submit to those opportunities that make the most sense for your goals as a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sarah, in our final moments with you today, if anyone wants to get in contact with you to talk to you about your work, your poems, talk to you a little bit more about the Women of Appalachia Project, or to find out more information about that, how can they get in contact with you, first of all, and where can they get copies of your work, either work that's been published or stuff that you're working on now?
Well, I guess they can just contact me at my email address, which is intermission_Sarah@yahoo. The Women of Appalachia Speak is available on Amazon, and we're planning to continue with the publication, so those are always available. And it's womenofappalachia.com for information on the submission window that'll be opening.
Fantastic. Sarah Burroway has been our guest here today on Chapters, a writer and theater artist from Flatwoods, Kentucky. We've been talking to her today about her work and also the Women of Appalachia project and the Women Speak journal that she's been a part of for the last several years, and the organization doing quite well, growing and still going strong after several years of being in production and being in business. So Sarah, it's a pleasure having you on Chapters today. Thanks so much for coming to talk to us about your career and about the Women of Appalachia project, a really important project that I think people need to pay close attention to. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Elliot.
We also want to take a moment to thank Chris Dargish and the staff and management of Empire Books and News for their on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News and check out all of the author, editor, and publisher interviews, works that have been featured on the program here are available for sale right at Empire Books and News. Plus, Empire Books and News has the largest selection of magazines available to you in the Tri-States. So come on down to Pullman Square and get whatever reading taste you need and have satisfied right here at Empire Books and News. If you'd like to send us a question, comment, or suggestion about this Chapters program or any Chapters program that you've seen here on Armstrong Television, we want to hear from you. You can reach out to us at the email address that's right here at the bottom of the screen. We do ask that you please include your name and the town and community in which you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence. If you want to go back and take a look at previous episodes of Chapters from our 3+ years of author, editor, and publisher interviews, you can do that through the YouTube page, through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is right here at the bottom of the screen. When you type that into your computer, look for the Chapters tab, and we've got all of those interviews archived for you there as well. And if you like to use Facebook, we have a Facebook page for the Chapters program. That address is right here at the bottom of the screen. On the Facebook page, you'll find the most recent author, editor, and publisher interviews archived there. You can like those interviews, you can comment, interact with other viewers of the program, share those to your Facebook page or other group pages that you may be affiliated with. So however you like to stay in touch with the program or share and interact with what you've seen here on the program, we've made it possible to you and for you through one of those social media platforms. And we know many of you have reached out to us through one of those means, and we appreciate those comments and that feedback so very much. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.